The Kethari destroyer, Shadow's Edge, cut through the void like a predator stalking its prey. Its sleek, crystalline hull gleamed with an otherworldly purple light as it pursued the small cargo vessel that had dared to flee from their inspection. Captain, Veltar's four eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he watched the human ship on his tactical display. The primitive vessel was no match for Kethari technology. Its crude metal construction and laughably weak energy signatures made it an easy target. Distance to the human vessel? Veltar's voice carried the authority of someone who had never known defeat. 2,000,000 kilometers in closing, Captain, replied Navigator Zixon, her 6 arms dancing across the control surfaces with practiced precision. Their vessel is moving at maximum velocity, but they cannot escape us. Veltar allowed himself a moment of amusement. These humans were so predictable. They always ran when faced with superior force. In the 3 cycles since first contact, every human vessel had either surrendered immediately or attempted futile escape. None had ever stood and fought. "What is their cargo manifest showing?" he asked. Tactical Officer Morden consulted his readings. "Standard agricultural supplies, Captain. Grain shipments from their colony world Kepler 442b to their outpost at Wolf 359. Nothing of strategic value." "Good. We will board them, inspect their cargo, and demonstrate once again that human space belongs to the Kethari Empire." Veltar's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. "Prepare the boarding pods." The Shadow's Edge was a formidable vessel by any standard. At 800 meters long, it housed a crew of 400 Kethari warriors and enough firepower to level a small moon. Its quantum shields could deflect most known weapons, and its temporal drive allowed it to phase in and out of normal spacetime. The Kethari had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Their technology was advanced, their warriors disciplined, and their empire expanding. Humans were simply the latest species to learn the price of resistance. "Captain," Zixon's voice carried a note of surprise. "The human vessel is changing course." Veltar's attention snapped to the display. Indeed, the cargo ship was turning, but not toward surrender. It was heading deeper into the asteroid field they had been skirting. "Foolish," Mordun observed. "They think the asteroids will provide cover. They do not understand that our sensors can track them through any debris field." "Let them play their games," Veltar said. "It will make the hunt more interesting. Follow them in." The Shadow's Edge adjusted course, its powerful engines easily matching the human vessel's maneuvers. The asteroid field was dense with rocks, ranging from pebble size to small moon proportions. But Kethari technology made navigating such obstacles trivial. "Captain," Communications Officer Yelnara spoke up, her translator implant converting her words to the common tongue. "The human vessel is transmitting. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was distinctly human. Deeper than Kethari, vocalizations with that peculiar emotional undertone that marked their species. "Kethari vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the merchant ship New Horizon. We are carrying humanitarian supplies to civilian colonies. We request safe passage under the Geneva Accords." Veltar's mandibles clicked in derision. "The Geneva Accords apply only to conflicts between civilized species. Respond to them." Yelnara activated the communication array. "Human vessel, you are ordered to halt immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance is futile." There was a pause. Then Captain Chen's voice returned, and there was something different in her tone. Something that made Veltar's warrior instincts suddenly alert. "Negative, Kethari vessel. We will not be boarded today." "Captain," Zixon called out, her voice sharp with alarm. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the asteroid field. Multiple contacts are powering up simultaneously." Veltar spun toward the tactical display, his 4 eyes widening as dozens of new contacts appeared on the screen. They had been hidden among the asteroids, their energy signatures masked by the natural radiation of the space rocks. "How many?" he demanded. 47. "No, 53 contacts and climbing," Mordun reported, his usual confidence replaced by something approaching fear. Captain, these aren't cargo vessels. The first ship emerged from behind a massive asteroid, and Veltar felt his blood turn to ice. It was enormous, easily twice the size of the Shadow's Edge. But size wasn't what made his warrior's heart race with sudden, inexplicable terror. It was the ship's design. Where Kethari vessels were elegant and crystalline, this ship was a brutal wedge of gray metal and sharp angles. Weapon ports dotted, its hull like the eyes of some primordial predator. Strange markings covered its surface, symbols that seemed to speak of violence and determination. What class of vessel is that? Veltar whispered. More ships emerged from the asteroid field. Sleek destroyers with razor-sharp profiles, massive battlecruisers bristling with weapons, smaller vessels that moved with predatory grace between the larger ships. Captain, Yelnara's voice was barely a whisper. I'm receiving a transmission. It's from the large vessel. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was different from Captain Chen's. This one was deeper, harder, carrying an authority that made even Veltar straighten unconsciously. Kethari vessel, this is Admiral Marcus Stone of the Terran Defense Force battleship. Retribution. You are ordered to stand down immediately and return to your own territory. Veltar found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. This is Captain Veltar of the Kethari destroyer Shadow's Edge. You are in violation of Imperial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. There was a pause. Then Admiral Stone's voice returned, and there was something in it that made every Kethari on the bridge step back from their stations. Captain, let me explain something to you. For the past 3 years, you've been picking on our cargo ships and civilian vessels. You've been testing our defenses, probing our responses, assuming we were weak because we didn't immediately escalate to full warfare. Another ship emerged from the asteroids. This one was different from the others, sleek and predatory, with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. What you failed to understand, Admiral Stone continued, is that humans don't build our warships the same way we build our cargo vessels. We don't arm our merchant marine the same way we arm our military. A chill ran down Veltar's spine as he began to understand what was happening. You wanted to see what human warships look like, Captain. Congratulations. You're looking at them. The tactical display showed the true scope of what they faced. 57 human warships, ranging from destroyer-class vessels that dwarfed the Shadow's Edge to massive dreadnoughts that defied comprehension. Captain, Morden's voice was barely controlled panic. Their weapons, I've never seen energy signatures like these. And their shields? Captain, their defensive systems are reading as stronger than our own. Veltar stared at the display, his mind reeling. In 3 years of contact with humanity, they had never seen ships like these. How had they kept them hidden? How had they built such a massive fleet without the Kethari intelligence network detecting it? Admiral Stone, Veltar said, fighting to keep his voice steady. We had no knowledge of such vessels in human space. Of course you didn't. You were looking at cargo ships and thinking they represented our military capability. You were looking at our commercial vessels and assuming we were primitive. That was your first mistake. The largest of the human ships, the Retribution, was moving closer now. As it approached, Veltar could see details that made his 4 hearts pound with terror. The ship's hull was scarred with what looked like battle damage from previous conflicts. Weapon systems he couldn't identify powered up along its flanks. And on its prow, painted in stark white letters, were words in the human language that somehow conveyed menace even without translation. Your second mistake, Admiral Stone continued, was assuming that because we didn't immediately respond with overwhelming force, we couldn't. The human fleet was moving now, spreading out in a formation that spoke of tactical brilliance and long experience. They moved like predators, each ship in perfect position to support the others, every angle of approach covered. We've been watching you, Captain Veltar. We know about your raids on our shipping lanes. We know about your inspections of our cargo vessels. We know about your empire's expansion into what you call primitive species territories. The new Horizon, the cargo ship they had been pursuing, was moving to join the fleet formation. But as it did, Veltar realized with growing horror that it too was changing. Weapon systems were emerging from concealed compartments. Shield generators that had been hidden were powering up. Even our cargo ships, Admiral Stone said, as if reading his thoughts, are not quite what they appear to be. What? What do you want? Veltar managed to ask. We want you to go home, Captain. We want you to tell your superiors exactly what you've seen here. We want them to understand that humanity is not the easy conquest they believed us to be. The human fleet had completed its deployment. 57. Warships in perfect formation, their weapons trained on the single Kethari destroyer that had stumbled into their trap. But most importantly, Admiral Stone's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, yet somehow more terrifying than any shout. We want you to understand that this is not our entire fleet. This is just the task force we assigned to deal with raiders in this sector. Veltar felt his legs give out as the implications hit him. If this was just a task force, Captain, Zixon whispered, our sensors are detecting additional human vessels at the edge of scanner range. Dozens of them. You have exactly 60 seconds to plot a course back to Kethari space and engage your fastest drive, Admiral Stone said. After that, we will consider your presence here an act of war. Veltar looked around his bridge at his crew. These were veteran warriors who had participated in the conquest of multiple star systems. They had faced down fleets of enemy vessels and emerged victorious. But now, faced with humanity's true military might, they looked like frightened children. But remember this, Captain. Admiral Stone's final words carried across the void like a death sentence. If we detect Kethari military vessels in human space again, if you threaten our cargo ships, our colonies, or our people, we will not be so generous with our response. The communication cut off, leaving the bridge of the Shadow's edge in stunned silence. Veltar stared at the tactical display for a long moment, his mind struggling to process what he had learned. Everything they had believed about humanity was wrong. Everything their intelligence services had reported was incomplete. The humans hadn't been weak. They had been patient. They hadn't lacked military capability. They had been holding it in reserve. Captain? Zixon's voice was small and uncertain. Orders? Veltar straightened slowly, his pride warring with his survival instincts. Pride had built the Kethari Empire, but survival had kept it alive through countless conflicts. Today, survival won. Set course for home, he said quietly. Maximum velocity. As the Shadow's edge turned away from the human fleet and engaged its temporal drive, Veltar caught one last glimpse of the human warships. They remained in perfect formation, their weapons still trained on his vessel until it disappeared into hyperspace. He had come here to hunt what he believed was helpless prey. Instead, he had learned that humanity had been the predator all along. Chapter 2. The Message. The journey back to Kethari space took 18 standard hours. 18 hours for Captain Veltar to contemplate what he had witnessed and what it meant for everything he had believed about the galaxy's balance of power. The bridge of the Shadow's edge was unusually quiet. His crew worked at their stations, with a subdued efficiency that spoke of profound shock. They had been the hunters for so long that encountering true predators had shattered something fundamental in their worldview. Captain, Navigator Zixon spoke up as they approached the outer markers of the Kethari home system. We're receiving priority communication from Imperial Command. Admiral Corthan requests immediate debriefing upon our arrival. Veltar nodded, grimly. News of their encounter had somehow preceded them home. He wondered how much Imperial Command already knew, and how much they would believe. Any other vessels in our vicinity? He asked. 3 destroyer squadrons on patrol routes, Captain. The battlecruiser, Void's Wrath, is maintaining station near the 5th planet. Standard defensive posture. As they entered the system proper, Veltar found himself studying the Imperial fleet with new eyes. The ships that had once seemed so formidable now appeared insufficient. The destroyers were half the size of the smallest human vessels he had encountered. The mighty Void's Wrath, pride of the Imperial Navy, would have been dwarfed by the human ship called Retribution. His contemplation was interrupted by an incoming transmission. Shadow's Edge. This is Admiral Corthan. You are ordered to dock immediately at Tactical Command Station. Prepare for full debriefing. Acknowledged, Command, Veltar replied. 20 minutes later, he stood in the sterile conference room deep within the station's core, facing three of the Empire's most senior commanders. Admiral Corthan dominated the room with his imposing presence, over 3 meters tall even by Kethari standards, his chitinous exoskeleton bearing the scars of dozens of successful campaigns. Beside him sat Intelligence Director Nex Ara, her cybernetic implants glowing softly as they processed data streams from across the Empire. The third figure was General Torvek, the Empire's chief military strategist, his reputation built on the successful conquests of the past decade. Captain Veltar, Admiral Corthan began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your preliminary report claims you encountered a human military fleet of unprecedented size and capability. Before we proceed, I want you to understand the gravity of what you're suggesting. Sir? If your report is accurate, it means our entire intelligence assessment of human military capability has been fundamentally flawed. It means our expansion plans for that sector are based on false information. Most critically, it means we may have underestimated a potential threat to the Empire itself. Veltar straightened. Sir, I understand the implications. My report is accurate. Intelligence Director Nexara leaned forward, her artificial eyes focusing on him with uncomfortable intensity. Captain, our deep space monitoring networks have detected no signs of large-scale human fleet movements. Our agents in human space have reported no evidence of military buildup. How do you explain this discrepancy? Director, I can only report what I observed. 57 human warships, each significantly larger and more heavily armed than our own vessels. They emerged from concealment within an asteroid field with perfect coordination. Concealment? General Torvek spoke for the first time. Explain. Their ships were powered down and positioned among the asteroids in such a way that our sensors registered them as natural debris. Only when they activated their systems simultaneously did we detect them. The three senior officers exchanged glances. Veltar could see them processing the tactical implications. Show us the sensor data, Admiral Corthan commanded. Veltar activated the holographic display at the center of the room. The recorded sensor logs from the encounter began to play, showing the moment when dozens of contacts suddenly appeared. On the tactical grid, the room fell silent as the data unfolded. The energy signatures were clearly visible, massive power outputs that dwarfed anything in the Kethari database. The size estimates were equally shocking, showing human vessels that challenged the Empire's understanding of shipbuilding capabilities. This cannot be accurate, General Torvek whispered. These readings suggest weapon systems more advanced than our own. That was my assessment as well, General, Veltar replied. Their largest vessel, they called it the Retribution, showed shield strength readings that exceeded our best battlecruisers. Intelligence Director Nexara was running calculations through her implants, her artificial eyes flickering as she processed the data. If these readings are genuine and if this represents standard human military capability, then we have catastrophically misjudged their civilization. There's more, Veltar said quietly. The human admiral, Stone was his name, indicated that this was merely a task force assigned to deal with raiders in a single sector. He implied that their total fleet strength was significantly larger. The silence that followed was profound. Veltar could see each of his superiors grappling with the implications of this revelation. Admiral Corthan was the first to speak. Captain, I want you to understand that if your assessment is correct, it changes everything. Our expansion into human space, our strategic planning for the next phase of imperial growth, our entire relationship with this species, all of it must be reconsidered. Sir, there's something else you need to know. Speak. The human admiral knew about our raids on their shipping lanes. He knew about our inspections of their cargo vessels. They have been watching us, studying our tactics, preparing their response. This encounter was not accidental. It was a carefully planned demonstration. General Torvek leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. They allowed us to believe we were dealing with a primitive species while they prepared their military response. It's actually quite brilliant. Or quite terrifying, Intelligence Director Nexara added. A species capable of such strategic patience and deception represents a fundamentally different kind of threat than we've encountered before. Admiral Corthan stood and began pacing, his massive form moving with predatory grace. What was your assessment of their tactical capabilities during the encounter? Flawless, sir. Their fleet deployment was perfect. Every angle covered, every ship in optimal position to support the others. They moved like they had trained together for years. And their discipline, not a single vessel broke formation or acted independently. And their commander? Veltar paused, considering his words carefully. Admiral Stone was unusual. There was something in his voice, in his bearing, that suggested extensive combat experience. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had faced superior odds before and prevailed. Did he make any specific threats? He said that if Kethari military vessels were detected in human space again, they would not be so generous with their response. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. The Kethari Empire had built its power on the assumption that they possessed superior technology and tactical doctrine. If humanity could match or exceed their capabilities, we need to contact the Hegemony Council immediately, Admiral Corthan decided. This information must reach the highest levels of Imperial leadership. Sir, Veltar said carefully, there's one more thing you should know. Yes? As we were leaving, I detected additional human vessels at the edge of our scanner range. Dozens of them. The task force we encountered may have been part of a much larger fleet concentration. Intelligence Director Nexara's implants flashed rapidly as she processed this new information. Captain, are you suggesting that the humans may have been preparing for a larger military action? I don't know, Director. But if they can hide 57 warships in an asteroid field, completely undetected until they choose to reveal themselves, what else might they have hidden? The question hung in the air, unanswered but terrifying in its implications. General, Torvek spoke slowly, his voice heavy with the weight of strategic revelation. Gentlemen, I believe we may have encountered our first true peer competitor since the founding of the Empire. Or, Admiral Corthan said grimly, our first superior. As the meeting concluded and Veltar was dismissed, he couldn't shake the image of those human warships from his mind. The way they had moved with such precision, the casual confidence in Admiral Stone's voice, the implications of their hidden fleet strength, all of it pointed to one terrifying conclusion. The Kethari Empire, for the first time in its history, might not be the dominant military power in this region of space, and if that was true, everything was about to change. Chapter 3. The Council's Decision. The Imperial Hegemony Council convened an emergency session 3 days after Captain Veltar's debriefing. The Grand Chamber, carved from a single massive crystal deep within the Empire's capital world, had hosted discussions of conquest and expansion for over 2 centuries. Today, for the first time in living memory, it would host a discussion of retreat. Hegemarch Kreldun, supreme leader of the Kethari Empire, sat at the apex of the crystalline chamber. His ancient form bore the accumulated wisdom and battle scars of 3 centuries of rule. Around him, arranged in descending tiers, sat the 47 members of the Hegemony Council, military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and sector governors from across the Empire's 17 conquered systems. Fellow hegemonists, Kreldun's voice resonated through the chamber with the authority of absolute power. We convene this emergency session to address intelligence regarding human military capabilities that fundamentally challenges our strategic assumptions. Admiral Corthan stood to present the findings. The holographic display at the chamber's center activated, showing the sensor data from the Shadow's Edge's encounter. The data you are observing represents a complete intelligence failure, he began bluntly. For 3 years, we have operated under the assumption that humanity possessed minimal military capability. We based this assessment on encounters with their cargo vessels and civilian transports. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the council members absorbed the tactical readouts. The energy signatures alone were staggering. Individual, human vessels showing power outputs that match their largest battlecruisers. Sector Governor Vexilor, whose territory bordered human space, was the first to speak. Admiral, are we certain this data is accurate? Could there be some form of technological deception at work? Intelligence Director Nexara activated her cybernetic implants, accessing vast databases of information as she responded. Governor, we have triple verified all sensor data. Additionally, our deep space monitoring stations have since detected similar energy signatures throughout human space. What Captain Veltar encountered was not an isolated fleet. It appears to be representative of their standard military capability. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. General Torvek rose to continue the briefing. Fellow hegemonists, our analysis suggests that humanity has maintained a deliberate deception regarding their military strength. They allowed us to encounter only their civilian vessels while concealing their true fleet capabilities. This demonstrates strategic sophistication that exceeds our previous estimates. Hegemarch Kreldun leaned forward slightly. General, what is your assessment of their current military strength relative to our own? Based on observed vessel capabilities and estimated fleet size, humanity may possess military parity with the Empire, possibly superiority. The words fell into the chamber like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock and disbelief. For over 2 centuries, the Kethari Empire had been the dominant military force in this region of space. The concept of meeting an equal was alien to most council members. Military Commander Zarthek, hero of the conquest of the Vorthan system, stood with visible anger. Surely we are not considering retreat from inferior beings based on one encounter. The Empire has never backed down from any species. Commander, Admiral Korthan replied carefully, we are not dealing with inferior beings. We are dealing with a species that successfully concealed their true military capability for 3 years while allowing us to believe we held overwhelming superiority. That level of strategic patience and deception suggests a very dangerous opponent. Intelligence Director Nexara displayed additional data, long-range scans that had previously been dismissed as stellar phenomena, but now showed patterns consistent with hidden fleet concentrations. Our reanalysis of sensor data from the past 18 months reveals evidence of extensive human fleet movements that we failed to recognize. They have been positioning assets throughout their space, preparing for potential conflict while maintaining the appearance of weakness. Sector Governor Miktava, whose territory had seen the most inspections of human cargo vessels, spoke up nervously. If they were preparing for conflict, why did they wait? Why not strike first? The question hung in the air for a moment before Hegemarch Kreldun himself provided the answer. Because they wanted us to reveal our capabilities first. Every encounter with their cargo ships was an intelligence-gathering operation. They studied our tactics, our technology, our response patterns. They learned everything about us while revealing nothing about themselves. The strategic brilliance of it was undeniable and deeply unsettling. The Kethari had been outmaneuvered before the first shot was fired. What were their specific demands? Asked Defense Coordinator Pelnix. Admiral Korthan consulted his notes. They ordered all Kethari military vessels to withdraw from human space. They indicated that future incursions would be met with overwhelming force. Most significantly, they made it clear that the fleet Captain Veltar encountered was merely a task force, implying much larger forces in reserve. The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Voices rose as council members debated the implications, the options, and the unprecedented nature of their situation. Military Commander Zarthek's voice cut through the noise. Are we seriously considering capitulation to a species we have been successfully raiding for 3 years? We haven't been raiding them, General Torvek corrected sharply. We've been testing them, and they have just shown us the results of that test. Hegemarch Kreldun raised his hand, and silence immediately fell over the chamber. His ancient eyes surveyed the council members, weighing their words and their fears. Fellow hegemonists, we face a decision that will define the future of our empire. Do we escalate this conflict with a species whose true capabilities we have only begun to understand? Or do we adapt our strategy to acknowledge a new reality? Intelligence Director Nexara activated her implants again, displaying strategic projections. Hagemarch, our analysis suggests that a full-scale conflict with humanity would require committing 60% of our total fleet strength. Even, then victory would be uncertain. And what of our other territories? Asked Sector Governor Vexilor. If we commit so heavily to one front, we leave ourselves vulnerable to uprising in conquered systems. It was a valid concern. The Kethari Empire controlled 17 star systems, many of which still contained populations that resented imperial rule. A major military commitment against humanity could provide opportunities for rebellion elsewhere. There is another consideration, General Torvek added grimly. If humanity has been concealing their true capabilities, what other species in this region might be doing the same? How many of our easy conquests might actually be strategic deceptions? The question sent a chill through the chamber. If humanity could maintain such an elaborate deception for years, what about the other species the Empire considered primitive or weak? Hagemarch Kreldon stood slowly, his massive form commanding absolute attention. Fellow hegemonists, in my 3 centuries of rule, the Empire has grown from a single system to 17 worlds. We have achieved this through superior technology, superior tactics, and superior will, but we have also achieved it by recognizing when adaptation is necessary for survival. He paused, letting his words sink in. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that demand our respect. They have shown strategic patience that exceeds our own. Most importantly, they have revealed that our intelligence regarding their civilization was fundamentally flawed. Military Commander Zarthek stood again, his voice filled with traditional imperial pride. Hagemarch, are you suggesting we abandon our expansion into human space? I am suggesting that we recognize reality. We are no longer dealing with a primitive species ripe for conquest. We are dealing with a peer competitor whose true strength we have yet to fully understand. The chamber was silent as the council members absorbed their leader's words. What are your orders, Hagemarch? Admiral Corthan asked. Kreldon's response would echo through imperial history. All military vessels are to withdraw from human space immediately. Border patrols will maintain defensive positions only within our established territory. All raids, inspections, and incursions into human space are to cease immediately. And if they attempt to expand into our territory, asked Defense Coordinator Pelnix, then we will defend ourselves with the full might of the Empire, but we will not be the aggressors in this conflict. The decision sent shockwaves through the chamber. For the first time in Imperial history, they were choosing strategic withdrawal over conquest. Furthermore, the Hagemarch continued, Intelligence Director Nexara will conduct a complete reassessment of all species we consider primitive or weak. If humanity could deceive us so completely, others might be doing the same. As the council session concluded and the members filed out to implement their new orders, Hagemarch Kreldon remained in the chamber, contemplating the holographic display that still showed the human fleet data. In 3 centuries of rule, he had never encountered a species that could match Kethari strategic thinking. The humans had outmaneuvered them completely, allowing themselves to appear weak while gathering intelligence and building strength. It was, he had to admit, masterfully done. But it also meant that the galaxy was a far more dangerous place than they had realized. If one species could maintain such deception, how many others were out there watching and waiting for their moment to strike? The age of easy conquests, it seemed, was over. The Kethari Empire would have to learn to coexist with equals. The question was whether they were capable of such adaptation, or whether their imperial ambitions would ultimately lead to their destruction. Chapter 4. The human perspective Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the TDF battleship Retribution, watching the final Kethari vessel disappear from long-range sensors. Around him, his staff worked with quiet efficiency, maintaining combat readiness while monitoring the withdrawal of Imperial forces from human space. Admiral, reported Commander Sarah Chen, the same Captain Chen whose cargo vessel had been the bait in their carefully orchestrated trap. Long-range scanners confirm the last Kethari patrol has crossed back into their territory. Human space is clear of Imperial military vessels. Stone nodded, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. Operation Revelation had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. 3 years of careful planning, misdirection, and strategic patience had paid off. "Stand down from full combat alert but maintain elevated readiness," he ordered. "I want continuous monitoring of all approaches to human space. If they decide to test our resolve, we need advance warning." Lieutenant Commander David Park, the fleet's intelligence officer, approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we're receiving priority communications from Terran Command. Fleet Admiral Reeves requests immediate debrief. Transfer command to Captain Morrison and prepare for quantum burst transmission to Earth," Stone replied. "I want full tactical recordings of the encounter transmitted along with our operational assessment." As his staff prepared the communication, Stone reflected on the 3 years that had led to this moment. The plan had been audacious in its scope and patience. Deliberately allow the Kethari to believe humanity was weak, while secretly building one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The quantum link established, and Stone found himself face-to-face with Fleet Admiral Patricia Reeves, commander of all Terran Defense Forces. Her image shimmered slightly in the holographic display, transmitted across dozens of light-years in real time. "Admiral Stone, congratulations on a successful operation. Your preliminary reports suggest complete strategic success." "Thank you, Fleet Admiral." The Kethari response exceeded our expectations. They withdrew immediately without attempting to escalate or test our resolve. "What's your assessment of their military capability based on direct observation?" Stone consulted his tactical notes. "Their technology is formidable, but not superior to our own. Their vessels show impressive engineering, particularly their quantum shielding and temporal drive systems. However, their tactics appear to rely heavily on technological superiority rather than strategic innovation." "Meaning they're used to being the biggest predator in the pond," Admiral Reeves observed. "Exactly. When faced with an equal or superior force, they lacked tactical flexibility. Their withdrawal was immediate and complete. No probing actions, no attempts to gather additional intelligence. It suggests they're not accustomed to contested environments." Commander Chen stepped forward. "Admiral, if I may add, during my 3 years of cargo runs in their territory, I observed consistent patterns in their behavior. They're methodical, thorough but predictable. They follow established protocols even when circumstances might warrant adaptation." Admiral Reeves leaned forward with interest. "That's valuable intelligence, Commander. What else did you observe?" "Their boarding procedures never varied. Same questions, same inspection protocols, same tactical deployments. Over 50 encounters, and they never adapted their approach based on previous interactions." Stone nodded. "It's consistent with our overall assessment. The Kethari Empire appears to be built on a foundation of overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. When that advantage is removed, their tactical doctrine becomes a liability." "What about their strategic thinking?" Admiral Reeves asked. "This withdrawal suggests they're capable of recognizing when discretion is the better part of valor." "Agreed. Their leadership showed wisdom in avoiding an escalation they couldn't win, but that also means they're likely to spend considerable time and resources assessing our true capabilities." Lieutenant Commander Park activated additional displays, showing intelligence gathered during the operation. "Fleet Admiral, we intercepted numerous Kethari communications during the encounter. Their shock was genuine. They had no idea we possessed this level of military capability." "Which means our deception was complete," Admiral Reeves said with satisfaction. 3 years of appearing weak while building strength. How do you assess the long-term strategic implications? Stone considered the question carefully. "Fleet Admiral, I believe we've fundamentally altered the balance of power in this region. The Kethari Empire has been expanding aggressively for decades, conquering species they perceived as inferior. Our demonstration proves that aggressive expansion has limits. Do you think they'll honor their withdrawal?" "In the short term, yes. They're too shocked and uncertain to risk immediate confrontation. Long-term is harder to predict. They'll likely spend months or years reassessing their intelligence about us and other species they've considered primitive. Commander Chen added, based on my observations of their culture, losing face is extremely damaging to their leadership structure. This withdrawal will have internal political consequences we should monitor. Admiral Reeves nodded thoughtfully. Intelligence suggests they've already convened their highest council to discuss the implications. Our deep space monitoring stations are detecting increased communications traffic throughout their empire. They're probably wondering what other primitive species might be hiding similar capabilities, Lieutenant Commander Park observed. If we could deceive them so completely, it calls into question their entire assessment of galactic power structures. Stone smiled grimly. That was part of our strategic calculation. By demonstrating that their intelligence could be so fundamentally wrong about one species, we've introduced doubt about their assessments of all other species. Paranoia can be as effective as actual military strength, Admiral Reeves agreed. What's the status of our concealed assets? Still operational and undetected. The Kethari focused entirely on the fleet we revealed to them. Our deep space installations, hidden shipyards, and reserve fleets remain classified. As far as they know, what they saw represents our total military capability. Excellent. That gives us significant strategic depth if this situation deteriorates. Commander Chen stepped forward again. Fleet Admiral, there's something else worth noting. During my intelligence missions, I observed that several other species in this region have been watching human Kethari interactions closely. Our demonstration may have implications beyond just the Empire. Explain. The Andromedan Collective, the Centauri Alliance, even the Vegan Trade Federation, they've all been gauging how we handle Kethari aggression. Some may have been planning their own responses, waiting to see if humanity would resist or capitulate. Admiral, Reeves leaned back in her chair, processing the broader implications. So we may have inadvertently positioned ourselves as a regional power broker. Possibly. Several species have reached out through back channels since the encounter, expressing interest in enhanced cooperation with humanity. Stone nodded. It's not surprising. For years, everyone in this region has been trying to avoid Kethari attention. Now that someone has successfully stood up to them, the political landscape is shifting. What's our current fleet deployment? Admiral Reeves asked. Task Force 7 remains on station at the asteroid field, maintaining a visible presence. Task Forces 3 and 5 are conducting routine patrols along human trade routes. Reserve fleets remain at classified positions, ready for rapid deployment if needed. And our intelligence assessment of Kethari intentions going forward? Lieutenant Commander Park consulted his latest reports. Elevated military readiness along their borders, but no signs of offensive preparation. Increased intelligence gathering efforts, particularly long-range sensor sweeps of human space. Most significantly, they've recalled several patrol fleets from other sectors, suggesting they're consolidating forces for defense rather than continued expansion. That's exactly what we hope to achieve, Admiral Reeves said. Force them to shift from offense to defense, buy time for their other victims to organize resistance. Stone nodded. The Kethari Empire has been successful because they could concentrate overwhelming force against isolated, unprepared targets. If they have to defend multiple fronts while worrying about the true capabilities of their opponents, their expansion becomes untenable. Admiral, Commander Chen spoke up. We're receiving a priority communication from the Andromedan Collective. They're requesting a formal diplomatic meeting to discuss mutual interests regarding regional security. Admiral Reeves raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Approve the meeting, but ensure it takes place in neutral space with full security. Protocols. Understood, Fleet Admiral. What about our civilian shipping? Stone asked. The Kethari raids were disrupting trade routes throughout the region. Cargo traffic has increased 40% in the past week alone, Park reported. Word of the Imperial withdrawal has spread quickly through commercial channels. Ships that had been avoiding this region are returning to normal routes. Economic warfare in reverse, Admiral Reeves observed. By forcing the Kethari to withdraw, we've opened up trade opportunities that will strengthen all the species in this region. Stone smiled. Sometimes the best way to fight a war is to make it unprofitable for your enemy to continue. The strategic discussion continued for another hour, covering everything from fleet deployment to diplomatic protocols. As it concluded, Admiral Reeves delivered her final assessment. Admiral Stone, Operation Revelation represents one of the most successful strategic deceptions in human military history. You and your team have not only protected human space, but potentially altered the balance of power throughout this entire region. Thank you, Fleet Admiral. What are our standing orders going forward? Maintain current deployment, continue monitoring Kethari activities. Most importantly, be prepared for whatever comes next. The galaxy is about to discover that humanity is no longer content to be overlooked or underestimated. As the communication ended, Stone turned to address his senior staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we've accomplished our primary objective. The Kethari Empire now understands that humanity is not easy prey, but our work is far from over. He gestured to the tactical display showing the broader region of space. For 3 years, we've been gathering intelligence on every species in this sector. We know who's been oppressed, who's been exploited, and who's been planning resistance. The Kethari withdrawal creates opportunities, but it also creates instabilities. Commander Chen nodded. Several species may see this as their chance to settle old scores with the Empire. Exactly. And if this region descends into chaos, it serves no one's interests, including our own. We need to be prepared to help maintain stability while ensuring that the balance of power remains favorable to peaceful species. Lieutenant Commander Park brought up additional intelligence reports. Admiral, we're already seeing increased military activity from several species that were previously under Kethari dominance. The Vorthon resistance has begun operating openly for the first time in decades. Expected, but we need to monitor it carefully. Liberation movements can quickly become aggressive expansionism if not properly managed. Stone moved to the main viewport, looking out at the stars that now represented a fundamentally changed political landscape. The Kethari Empire built their power by convincing everyone else that resistance was futile. We've just proven that assumption wrong. Now we need to help build a new order based on mutual respect rather than fear. Sir, Commander Chen asked, what if the Kethari decide that diplomacy failed and return with everything they have? Stone turned back to his staff, his expression serious but confident. Then they'll discover that what they saw here was just the beginning. Operation Revelation revealed one task force. We have 7 more just like it, plus assets they can't even imagine. The bridge fell quiet as the implications sank in. The fleet the Kethari had encountered, massive and overwhelming as it appeared, represented only a fraction of humanity's true military capability. But, Stone continued, I don't think it will come to that. The Kethari are proud, but they're not stupid. They've survived as an empire for centuries by knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. And if we're wrong? Park asked. Stone's smile was cold and confident. Then the galaxy will discover why humans don't build our warships the same way we build our cargo vessels. As the Retribution and its escort fleet maintained their patrol of human space, a new chapter in galactic politics was beginning. The age of Kethari dominance was ending, not with the explosion of warfare, but with the quiet demonstration of superior strategy and overwhelming force held in reserve. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage not with conquest, but with the promise of protection for those who chose peace over aggression. The message was clear. The galaxy had a new guardian, and it was not interested in empire building. It was interested in peace through strength. And that, perhaps, was the most revolutionary concept of all. Epilogue. 6 months later, neutral station orbiting Kepler 438b had been hastily constructed for this purpose. The first formal diplomatic summit between the Kethari Empire and the Terran Defense Force. The station's corridors buzzed with activity as representatives from a dozen species gathered to witness what many considered the most significant diplomatic event in recent galactic history. Admiral Marcus Stone entered Conference Room Alpha with the measured stride of someone comfortable with his role in shaping history. Across the polished obsidian table sat Hagemarch Kreldun himself, the ancient ruler of the Kethari Empire, flanked by his most trusted advisors. The two leaders studied each other for a moment, predator recognizing predator, strategist acknowledging strategist. Hagemarch, Stone said, inclining his head slightly in a gesture of respect between equals. Admiral, Kreldun replied, his translator converting his complex vocalizations into perfect English. I confess I have been curious to meet the architect of our educational encounter 6 months ago. Stone smiled. Education was indeed our primary objective, though I suspect the lessons learned extended far beyond what we initially intended. Indeed. Your demonstration has had consequences throughout our empire, some beneficial, others less so. The Hagemarch gestured to one of his advisors, Intelligence Director Nexara, her cybernetic implants glowing softly as she processed constant data streams. Director Nexara has spent the past 6 months conducting the intelligence reassessment you inadvertently inspired. The results have been illuminating. Stone raised an eyebrow. Oh? It appears that humanity was not the only species maintaining strategic deceptions. Our comprehensive review has identified no fewer than 7 civilizations whose true capabilities we had significantly underestimated. The implications were staggering. If 7 other species had been hiding their strength while appearing weak, the entire balance of power in this region was built on false assumptions. The Andromedan Collective, for instance, Nexara continued, appears to possess military shipbuilding capabilities that rival our own. The Centauri Alliance has been conducting classified weapons research for decades. Even the seemingly primitive Vorthon have developed defensive technologies that make conquest problematic. Stone kept his expression neutral, though internally, he was fascinated. Humanity's deception had been so successful that it inspired a complete reevaluation of galactic politics. I assume this has led to some strategic reconsiderations within your empire? Hagemarch Kreldun's mandibles clicked, and what Stone had learned was the Kethari equivalent of rueful laughter. Admiral, your species has accomplished something remarkable. Without firing a shot, you have forced the most successful expansionist empire in recent history to fundamentally question its approach to galactic politics. That was never our intention, Hagemarch. Our goal was simply to protect human space and commerce, perhaps. But the result remains the same. The age of easy conquest is over. Species that once seemed helpless have revealed hidden strength. Others have begun forming defensive alliances. The galaxy, it seems, has grown tired of being conquered. Stone leaned back in his chair. And how does the Empire adapt to this new reality? That, Admiral, is why we are here. Kreldun activated a holographic display showing the current political map of their region of space. Instead of the clear imperial territories that had existed 6 months ago, the map now showed a complex web of alliances, neutral zones, and contested areas. The Empire remains strong, he continued, but we are no longer the overwhelming force we once were. Continued expansion through conquest is no longer sustainable. So you're proposing what exactly? A new paradigm. Mutual recognition of sovereignty. Formal borders, trade agreements rather than tribute demands. Stone studied the Kethari leader carefully. The ancient being radiated the same authority he had always possessed. But there was something else now, a pragmatic acceptance of changed circumstances that spoke of true strategic wisdom. You're proposing peace. I am proposing survival. For all of us. The room fell silent as both leaders contemplated the magnitude of what was being discussed. A formal peace treaty between humanity and the Kethari Empire would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. What are your specific terms? Stone asked. Admiral Korthan, the Kethari military commander, leaned forward. Complete withdrawal of Imperial forces from human space, with established neutral zones along our borders. Recognition of human sovereignty over all current territories and trade routes, in exchange for non-aggression pacts, trade agreements beneficial to both species. Most importantly, cooperation in maintaining regional stability. Stone raised an eyebrow. You want humanity's help in keeping the peace? Hegemarch Kreldun's expression grew serious. Admiral, your demonstration 6 months ago did more than protect human space. It inspired hope among dozens of oppressed species throughout this region. Several have already begun independence movements. Others are forming military alliances. And you're concerned about chaos. I am concerned about unnecessary warfare. The Empire has existed for centuries, but it has also provided stability. If our authority collapses too quickly, the resulting power vacuum could lead to conflicts that make our expansion seem peaceful by comparison. It was a valid concern. Stone had seen the intelligence reports, uprisings in 3 former imperial territories, border skirmishes between newly liberated species, and the formation of military alliances that could easily become aggressive rather than defensive. What role do you see humanity playing in this transition? You have proven yourselves capable of strategic patience and overwhelming force when necessary. More importantly, you have demonstrated that you prefer peace to conquest. The galaxy needs that kind of leadership. Stone considered the proposal carefully. Humanity had never sought to become a galactic power broker, but circumstances seemed to be pushing them in that direction. Hegemarch, I appreciate the confidence you're placing in humanity, but we're not interested in replacing the Empire as a regional hegemon. Nor are we asking you to. We propose a partnership. Imperial experience in governance and administration, combined with human principles of peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. The offer was tempting and strategically sound, but Stone knew it would require careful consideration by the Terran government. I'll need to consult with my superiors, but I'm authorized to negotiate preliminary agreements. The next several hours were spent working through the details of what would become known as the Kepler Accords, the first formal peace treaty between the Kethari Empire and humanity, and the foundation for a new approach to galactic politics. The negotiations concluded, Hegemarch Kreldun made one final observation. Admiral, in 3 centuries of rule, I have conquered 17 star systems and subjugated dozens of species. Yet your species accomplished something I never could, which is, you made the galaxy safer without conquering anyone. You demonstrated that strength could be used for protection rather than dominance. That, perhaps, is the most profound victory of all. Stone stood and extended his hand, a human gesture that the Hegemarch had learned to recognize. To a new chapter, in galactic history. Kreldun grasped the offered hand with surprising gentleness for such a massive being. To peace through understanding rather than fear. As news of the Kepler Accord spread throughout known space, it marked the beginning of a new era. The age of imperial expansion was ending, replaced by an unprecedented experiment in cooperative, galactic governance. Humanity had sought only to protect their own space. Instead, they had inadvertently become the catalyst for the most significant political transformation in galactic history. The cargo ship New Horizon, commanded by Captain Sarah Chen, continued its regular runs throughout the region, but now, it carried trade goods and diplomatic messages rather than serving as bait for military operations. The battleship, Retribution, and its fleet remained on patrol, but their mission had evolved from deterrence to peacekeeping, and in the depths of space, hidden fleets and concealed installations stood ready, not for conquest, but for protection of the new order that humanity had helped create. The galaxy had learned that there were alternatives to empire and submission. Sometimes the greatest victory was achieved not through conquest, but through the patient demonstration that there was a better way to coexist among the stars. The age of humanity's fuck yeah had begun, not with a declaration of superiority, but with a promise of protection for those who chose peace over war. And, perhaps that was the most human response of all, to meet aggression with strength, but to offer that strength in service of others rather than in pursuit of dominion. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the hope of countless species who had discovered that the universe was not, after all, a place where only the strong survived. It was a place where the strong could choose to protect the weak. And that choice, more than any weapon or fleet, would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The end.